In the bleak midwinter, a ray of new life. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Who collects the collections? The iconic Curt Vendel Atari collection is saved by a museum.
Take on General ReMastered. Mike Singleton's classic Midwinter gets revisited.
Noob or Hacksaw? We talk about the designer behind two of gaming's best ever maps.
And an arcade church, along with a brand new 486 compatible motherboard, coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 7th of February, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Chris.
What?
The intro line this week was in the bleak midwinter. What temperature is it in Perth, Australia, right this minute?
I shall tell you. I shall check my phone to see what the current temperature is. It's 9:20 p.m. here in Perth, and it's still 35 degrees Celsius. And I have no aircon. No, I have no aircon.
Nice and comfortable. No air conditioning.
It was 42 in the middle of the day. 42 in the middle of the day. It's now 35, and we have no aircon. It's been off since last Friday, so they'll come and fix it at some point, I'm sure. In the meantime, we're just getting very good at opening the house when outside is cool and closing the house when outside is hot. And that's the way it works.
Is it the bleak midwinter in Wisconsin?
It's perking up. It's a mere minus 5 or 6 Celsius right now, which is a big swing from the past few weeks. So it's now just normal winter.
Yeah. The issue in Scotland is it's dark by about 4 o'clock and it only gets light at 8 o'clock in the morning. So there's almost no sunlight this time of year. Anyway. Retro will cheer us all up. It's much nicer than all that rubbish. And we've got lots to cover today.
Last week, I spoke about extreme efforts, including dumpster diving, to try to preserve tech history. And although I wasn't talking about anyone in particular, in the back of my mind was one of the better-known examples of this kind of above-and-beyond effort, the legendary Atari archivist and latter-day developer Curt Vendel. Fitting, then, that this week's story, as submitted by Pajaco6502, is expressly about Vendel and his own substantial legacy. So Vendel passed away in the summer of 2020, but he's returned to the news because the Strong National Museum of Play, located in Rochester, New York, recently announced their acquisition of Vendel's extensive collection. And that spans virtually every home computer and console product that original Atari was ever involved with. And we're talking, from Atari 2600 hardware to the attempts at a successor to the Jaguar. Vendel was a massive figure in post-Atari circles, one of the most serious collectors and aggregators of Atari collateral. He's got everything from intra-office memos to prototype circuit boards, and he was also a significant developer in his own right. He did the design of some of the original Atari flashback hardware, and that includes being credited as the force who made sure that it was possible for the Flashback 2 to be modded so it could support an original Atari 2600 cartridge slot. Now, years later, the Atari 2600 Plus and 7800 Plus, they have that built-in approach of taking real hardware cartridges. That's become part of the official design. To quote the Strong's announcement, quote, "The Curt Vendel Atari collection includes hundreds of pieces of computer media on a variety of formats, along with original schematics and engineering drawings for released and unreleased consumer products, such as the Atari 8-bit line of computers, the television interface adapter TIA chip that powered the Atari 2600, the Atari 2800, or Japanese version of the 2600, and unreleased Jaguar 2. It goes on to say, quote, "Highlights in the collection include original logbooks from Atari engineer Ron Milner, one of the creators of the 2600 prototype, and programmer Owen Rubin, licensing documents with outside companies such as Sega, product design documentation such as original sticker and packaging designs for Home Pong and box art for games such as Atari XE's Battlezone, source code and ROM release folios for Atari Jaguar and Atari 2600 games, merchandising and trade show materials, including point-of-purchase demonstration kiosks and original cardboard standees for Atari home consoles and games like E.T. the Extraterrestrial." So, Chris, Dave, were you guys aware of Vendel's work at all before today?
Yeah. Control-Alt-Reese. Reese, friend of the channel, former temporary host, is right into his Atari history, and he's talked about Vendel's work a few times in the past, and that's how I've heard about it. Fascinating guy, so much there to talk about. So yeah, other than that, though, I wouldn't have known about him.
I've probably heard his name because I go through the history videos on the Atari collection, but it hasn't sunk in. So, yeah.
So when the announcement was made, I did reach out to The Strong, and they shared some images of the new collection. We were not able to arrange an interview before this episode had to be recorded, but I really wanted to be able to put this story into greater context. So I reached out to some serious experts in Atari history. Kay Savetz, an Atari historian and archivist who has published more than 400 interviews with people involved with Atari 8-bit computers on Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast, wrote back promptly with these thoughts, and I'll quote, "I'm so glad that The Strong ended up with Curt's Atari collection. It really is the best of all possible outcomes. Rather than getting parceled out or sold to collectors or ending up at a museum that hoards collections like gold bars at Fort Knox, the collection will be at The Strong. I know some of the people at The Strong. I've toured the public and private sides of the venue, and am confident that they will do right by this collection." Unquote. And thank you to Kay for sending in those remarks so quickly.
Can we get him as a guest? Think he can be a guest?
Yep.
Good.
And I also reached out to Marty Goldberg, who was a longtime collaborator of Vendel's across many dimensions, including but not limited to co-authoring the historical tome Atari Business is Fun. And Marty was kind enough to share a great deal of information about this development, which I will do my best to summarize here. Again, very grateful to Marty for getting back to me with so much information and so quickly. Marty shared that this process actually began back in 2016, 4 years before Vendel's death, but after he had already been through some significant and life-threatening conditions and treatment. So through this process, Curt informed Marty and some other trusted associates that his top priority was to keep the bulk of his extensive collection available for the public and for research rather than becoming part of a private collection. And as the Strong Museum had already been building up an Atari coin-op collection and had taken on a few of Curt's pieces already, that institution became his top priority. After Vendel's passing, Marty worked with his widow Michelle to take legal responsibility for disposing of his substantial collection. And I will quote Marty directly for this next section. Quote, "The plan was for me to head out to New York, then to Curt and Michelle's to take stock of everything and start cataloging. Likewise, I wanted to get things out he may have owed people, since he routinely either took things in to repair or tinker with for people, as well as would sell materials. Additionally, there was the XM project he had been working on that I needed to take stock of and figure out what to do with. All told, from 2021 to 2024, I did 5 trips to New York. That first time was hard emotionally. It was my first time at Curt's, and the family hadn't touched his office room. Everything was literally how it was the day he died. Going through stuff would bring a lot of good memories up with him, as well as frustrations, as I discovered nothing was in any sort of recognizable order. Any sort of organization was all in his head. After getting a feel for everything that was there, I saw that even with me staying there a good week at a time and cataloging nonstop that entire time, it was still going to take a while." Unquote. So by late in 2023, Marty shifted strategy from exhaustive cataloging to simply asking the Strong to take a more active role and make an offer for the collection as it stood. The family accepted the offer that the Strong Museum made, and in June 2024, Marty and some other collaborators worked with the Strong's pickup team. Marty explained the gap in time between then and now. Quote, "I wasn't allowed to announce that the sale and transfer had occurred because the Strong wanted to wait until the board had cleared everything for their own announcement that finally happened recently." Unquote. So obviously, things can move slowly in the world of museum curation, and that's no doubt complicated by all the forms of mixed media that are involved in the history of a technology company. But the job is done, and more than 5 years after his passing, Vendel's collection is finally where he intended it to be when the need arose. Obviously, this moment comes for all of us, and we 3 each own some unique, rare, valuable, and or difficult to obtain items in our personal collections. And museums are one way to try to provide those collections with some permanence, although they're not foolproof, and I don't just mean in a heat death of the universe kind of way. Notably, the Paul Allen-funded Living Computers Museum didn't even last a decade despite being established by one of the richest men in world history. So guys, any thoughts? Are you either the next man up for anybody's collection the way that Marty was for Curt, or have you made any plans for what's next after you're gone?
So I was pleased to read this because I'm well aware of the what happened with the Paul Allen thing. We covered it on here. It's not a good outcome at all. So it's good to hear what's happened here. It's reassuring. Sometimes I do think about it myself, though. I don't think I have any item that's exceptionally rare, but I have a lot of stuff, and I have quite a few things that are valuable. Probably all of the hardware would go to SOG, the Scottish Amiga Users Group, because they're local at least, so they could get it. And all the big box stuff would probably go to Neil at the Cave. He loves his big box games. I know he likes his Ultima. I mean, it would probably make his day if I died and he got all my Ultima boxes. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I think that's where it would go there. But yeah, I do think about it, but then I don't like to think about it. And if it happens, it's not my problem.
Yeah, that's true. It's always sad when someone passes, and I'm certainly not interested in taking over somebody's collection in that way. However, I did stare long and hard at a text message to that effect. And of course, I'm not going to go into details, but this same message was sent to myself and another friend that's also into this same hobby. And I guess it's just a way of, if this event comes to pass, of at least taking it off the family's hands and then making sure it gets into, the hands of people that are going to use it, or as this person suggested, it could go into the local group. It's a bit like your idea, Dave, but it's not the way you want to come across the stuff at all. It's icky. As for my own collection, well, like you said, Dave, it won't be my problem, and might not be a popular view, but if it goes in a skip, I won't know about it. So I actually don't care.
It's not unreasonable to think if we were all to last another 40 or 50 years, whatever it is, at that point, the majority of what we have probably not worth anything to people. It's only the rarest stuff, like Jason's Commodore 65 and
yes, the Bank Vault computer. Yes,
things like that. I mean, a bog standard Spectrum or Amstrad or ST and so on. I'm not sure how much. Yeah, I don't know.
So for me, and if that's the easiest way for the family to deal with it, throw it in the skip. But do you know what I would like? Because I'm crazy like this. And that's for somebody to drip feed all my items into charity shops over a long period of time all over the place. So, and at charity shop prices. So, totally unannounced. So I'd love for someone to be browsing and suddenly stop among the board game section and sort of think to themselves, how did a Amiga 500 Batman pack end up here for $25? I think that would be quite nice for items to just start appearing where old things should appear, in the charity shops for a fistful of dollars. That would be nice.
Our congratulations to the Strong, to Marty Goldberg, and the others involved in keeping the extensive Vendel collection of Atari assets largely intact, and now even better positioned to help a wider range of enthusiasts and scholars into the future.
We are sponsored this week, thank you very much, by Pixel Addict magazine, Britain's best-selling tech history magazine. What is Wisconsin's best tech magazine, Jason? Is it yours? Do you write one in Wisconsin?
No, but Compute started here. So if you go historically, it would be Compute.
Yeah.
It is a big hotbed of Commodore PET users here in the greater Madison area. Easy for me to say.
And the Raven internal newsletter, no doubt, as well. Now,
went over my head, sorry.
Raven software?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We should probably talk about the sponsor, though, in the sponsor section.
I agree.
Issue 32 is The Death of Dial-Up. That's an American road in the front, isn't it, Jason? That's Route 66. What's the one that goes through the desert?
Yeah, that could be 66.
Yeah,
because of the broken white lines. That's your giveaway.
Yeah. WWF Wrestling Special. You're into your wrestling, Jason?
Yeah, nobody.
Wrestling, Chris?
No.
Retrospectives on Galaxian and System Shock. System Shock, no one talks about that one anymore. But thank you for sponsoring us. If you'd like to get Pixel Addict, you would go to the website, Chris.
It's addict.media.
Well done. You can see the wheels turning there. And you would get it delivered through your letterbox or put into your letter hopper thing. Mailbox? Is that what it mailbox? What do you have in Australia?
Yeah, we have mailboxes at the end of the drive. Yeah,
mailbox. Or you can get it digitally as well if you like. But thank you for sponsoring us, Pixel Addict.
We don't have the little arm that goes up.
Most great games are iterations on things that came before them. The old phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants, can apply. Sometimes they take a bigger leap forward than others. Sometimes they just polish and refine something that already exists to the point where it's much better. Or even other times, they manage to market, hype, or do something else with their game to a point where it catches attention where others haven't done that. Now, none of that should be knocked. It's why we've got far more great games than we could ever play, and it's why we're going to get more and more. But I do think special attention should go, and in fact, I don't think we're bad at doing this, to be fair, but I do think a special attention should go to the really innovative games and the people behind them. So the Johns at id, Peter Molyneux, Richard Garriott, for example, or Hideo Kojima, Shigeru Miyamoto, or Yu Suzuki, or maybe even subreddit user Jordan Mechner. Today's story, though, is about another one, and maybe someone who doesn't get the attention that he does warrant. Mike Singleton. Now, he started on the Commodore PET and the ZX81, and he moved on to making arcade clones in the 80s for Micros. And then his first huge game was The Lords of Midnight, a 4,000 location game that fit into the memory of a 48K Spectrum. He made it supposedly as a response to being challenged to do something better than the Hobbit text adventure. Now, it uses a landscaping technique with pre-shifted sprites to generate a landscape view from wherever you are in the 4,000 locations, and this means that you could see a mountain in the distance and then walk up to it and see it get bigger. So this gave you a geographic presence that you really did feel as if you were somewhere in this map, not just anywhere. And you started as Luxor, the Moon Prince, and you could recruit other lords to your cause and raise armies and defend citadels, and everything was happening simultaneously. And he moved on to the sequel, Doom Dark's Revenge, 6,000 locations this time, and the NPCs have been given agenda, agency, personality, and freedom to move around. Some of them would hate you. Some of them might be convinced to join your cause. Some of these things he then moved on to make in War in Middle-earth, a strategy war game. And then some years later, in 1990, came Midwinter. Now, I told you about these games that came before because these are the technology and concepts that he developed that led into Midwinter. It wasn't Singleton's first Atari ST game, but it's the first time that he left the 8-bit machines behind entirely. In his previous ST games like Rebel Universe and War in Middle-earth, there were less capable 8-bit versions, and in fact, when he got to Whirligig, the 8-bit version was actually cancelled by Microprose because they didn't feel it was doing the 3D justice. I actually think Rebel Universe, was that Commodore 64 first?
I don't know about first. It definitely was out on the C64. I'm not. I thought that the 16-bit versions were first, but that may be
I'm not sure.
Easy memory.
Not sure. But he took these games and he mapped them onto a 3D polygon-based map. He kept the first-person perspective, but he made it truly 3D. And you moved around the map with various methods. So you used skis and hang gliders and snowmobiles and even cable cars and hang gliding. Hang gliding twice if you want to. The island of Midwinter is kept habitable by a series of heat mines. Otherwise, it is just snow everywhere, a sort of colonized Arctic. The goal of the game, though, was to defeat the evil General Masters, and you did so by recruiting other people with your main character, Captain John Stark.
Stark actually seems a common name in fiction, I think, Dave. We've been binge-watching Farscape. For any Farscape fans, my side, your side, my side, your side.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's Tony Stark in Marvel, there's Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, Ransom Stark in BloodNet. It's the perfect name for a protagonist in this game, though, because the land of Midwinter is Stark. You will team up, though, and recruit lots of people who have different skills, and with these skills being better, the more the skiing is, for example, the better the skiing skill is, the better you are at skiing, the better your sniping skill is, the better you are at shooting. And it runs in time slices. So you've got 2 hours of Stark, and if you've managed to recruit other people, you have 2 hours of them, and it all happens simultaneously. So, well, not simultaneously, but simultaneously. So you would do your 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. as Stark, and then 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. as Nurse Maddox, and 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. as Constable Pringle, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. as Sergeant Llewellyn, etc. And then your turn's over, and it's time for General Masters and his forces to do the same. You'll go into 3D sequences as you move around. You can get hurt. Your abilities will drop. You'll capture places, and you'll blow up radio stations and commit sabotage against Masters and finally defeat him. Or if you're like me, you'll finally lose because it's so difficult. It is an incredibly deep strategy and action game. And there's a lovely big proper manual to it as well. And I think people perhaps underestimate what Midwinter was. They didn't quite realize there's quite the depth to it. But it's being remade, and that's why we're talking about it. And that someone is Dr. Evil, who I can reliably reveal is the same Dr. Evil from the films.
No. We have that on good authority then.
No, he's not.
How much is it going to cost? $1 billion?
$1 million.
Is it going to have laser beam
shots? It was me that was sitting with a cat there as well, so maybe I'm Dr. Evil. He's using Rust, and it's not yet finished. It's a ground-up remake, so you'll need to forgive me for saying in the intro, remastered. I'm aware it's not that, but I wanted the headline. The project has now been updated to version 0.6. It's considered pre-alpha, but it is playable. The developer aims for a faithful remaster. This means retaining the original 1989 aesthetic, so flat-shaded polygons and mechanics. It runs at a smooth frame rate, unlike the original versions, which can be quite choppy, and supports modern control systems like WASD. And there is a playable build on itch.io. I mean, the original Atari ST game is great to play now, but a modern remake might take a few rough edges off those FPS rates, something we were talking about a few weeks ago, and make the game more accessible. But are you into 3D exploration, strategy, and skiing?
I'm not into skiing. I would do so bad at skiing. I'd like to try snowboarding, but I think I've left that too old. I'm over 50 now. Yeah, I like 3D strategy games. Yeah, imagine just one fall. That's the problem, right? You know, if you fall over these days, it's going to hurt more for longer. That's the problem. And probably cost a lot of money. I do need to play Midwinter. I always loved the screenshots and the magazine reviews back in the day, but never ended up playing it. Was there a playable demo on a cover disc? Because I certainly had a dabble with something.
It's the era for it. If it wasn't for Midwinter, then maybe Midwinter 2.
And I think I maybe fall in the dismissed it as not as deep as it actually is camp, because I think I also did feel it was it felt a bit freescapey, a bit sort of Dungeon Master, Castle Master driller in the presentation. So maybe I sort of, didn't evaluate it properly. I'd love to have a go, especially after what you said about it. Is this the kind of remake, a bit like the Stunt Car Racer remake we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, where it's the same but smoother? Is that what we're talking about here?
That's what he's hoping for, yes. He wants to make it feel the same, but take the rough edges off without changing the basic gameplay.
That would be great. That would be absolutely fantastic. The first big map, because this is a huge game, right? The first big map game I think I ever played was Delta Force Land Warrior on the PC. I don't know if you've ever played that. It's a first-person shooter, but the maps are gigantic, and you do a lot of sniping and literally walking through canyons in a Middle Eastern landscape, and your targets are literally dots. Oh, that dot on the other side of the hill is moving. Oh, now it's shooting at me. Maybe I should scope in, and that sort of expanse. But actually, maybe I'm lying, because maybe it's Mercenary on the Amiga. That's a big map game.
Yeah, Mercenary and Damocles. There must be something in common there, because they must be packing procedurally the landscape into it, because obviously Damocles couldn't have all of the planets and moons and all the rest of it in it. So there must be something along those lines there. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And in fact, I mean, we were having a behind the curtain here, guys. We were having a conversation off camera about some games where we feel we're not sure if it needs a remake, but actually Mercenary, one of my favorite games ever. I would love to see a remake of Mercenary. I think that would
been done.
Has it?
Done. Yeah.
When did I miss that? How long ago was that?
You should watch This Week in Retro. It's called Mercenary Reloaded, and we covered it in an earlier episode.
Did I cover it as a story? Did I cover it?
You might have done. I will stick the link to the Mercenary site, fantastic site, in the show notes, so that could be there as well.
Oh, fantastic. But I think, what you're saying about standing on the shoulders of giants, when you talk about the games of this size, it does make me think about, from a modern game perspective, Far Cry 4, which absolutely blew me away the first time I played that. Such depth of landscapes, and like you say, all the vehicles that you need to traverse it, because it's just too big to walk it. Yeah, absolutely love it.
So, fun fact, the sequel was marketed in North America simply as a game called Flames of Freedom. There was no mention on the box of it being Midwinter 2, and that was the game that I picked up to supplement the pack-in stuff that I got with my Amiga 500 in late 1991. So I've spent a lot of time playing the sequel, but weirdly have just never made it around to going back to play the original Midwinter. And in Flames of Freedom, you're on it's basically Africa that's broken up into a bunch of different islands. So instead of skiing and hang gliding, there's like a flying sub, and there's, hot air balloons and zeppelins and things like that. So similar, lots and lots of different modes of transport, but some of them are more fitting to the African theme.
I guess that would mean that the original Midwinter didn't really make it in the US, because you don't want to buy number 2 of a series you've not heard of.
Yeah, I have to go back and look. I believe it was sold here. I just have a feeling that the publisher was like, you know what, it's not going to have a big enough following that will help us. Let's just, and I mean, it worked. I had no idea that I was getting a sequel until the Midwinter 2 logo came up when the game started. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. But to your original premise, Dave, I think you're right that Singleton probably doesn't get enough lasting credit for all the work that he did with procedural generation, things that made it possible to cram all those locations into the Lord of Midnight games. Although I will pick up a theme that we talk about a lot in the Retro Adventures. More locations does not necessarily mean a better game, and that's true in text adventures as well as other types of gaming.
Oh, there's nothing worse than playing a text adventure and you're in a maze, or you're in this thing with nothing in it. And that's the point of it. No, they don't add anything to a game.
But even that idea that legendarily it was like, well, can you make something bigger than The Hobbit? Oh, hold my beer. All right, maybe that's not the only good part of it. And Singleton, he has some glaring liabilities as a game designer, but what he was able to pack into those Lords of Midnight games, or all the star systems that you get in a single load Rebel universe, or all the detail in Midwinter that fit on a single double density 3.5-inch floppy. Like he was doing really good work.
You can see what he was trying, though. I mean, each time he made a game, he was trying for the same thing. He was trying to create a whole universe that interacted with itself.
Do we know, can you guys think of examples of people doing much more with those types of overlapping mechanics? Like you said, Dave, where you're playing different characters through that same 2-hour period. In the same way that we know, Laser Squad grows up to be UFO Enemy Unknown. Is there an obvious successor to the Midwinter mechanic?
Far Cry.
Okay, works
in terms of everything else, but as for the windows of time, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah, not the windows of time bit.
Yeah, because if we talk about Rebel Star and Laser Squad and all the rest of it, yeah, there's action points and tons, but it's so different a game that it doesn't really feel like anything like this. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think I can think of anything.
Let us know on the subreddit.
Yeah. As I said, though, if you're not familiar with Midwinter, then I'm sure that Far Cry must be in some way inspired by it. But Dr. Evil does need your help. He wants to continue this development. There is a project website, which is midwinter-remaster.titanium-helix.com. There is a video which will be playing in the background on this as you're watching it. Bruce, who is Dr. Evil, would love your help. Would love feedback he says, from anyone who remembers skiing into combat with nothing but grenades and a sniper rifle.
More exciting action on our Patreon. Thank you so much to Kevin M. as well as Rational Recreation that have converted to annual subscriptions, as well as our new monthly members, Killian and YYZ Kevin. I presume you're a big Rush fan, or you really enjoy the Toronto airport. Either way, welcome to our Patreon, which you can get to at patreon.com/thisweekinretro. Thank you so much for your new and ongoing support.
Pico IDE from last week, it did indeed go live as we hoped it would. And it immediately hit its funding goal just over an hour. Congratulations, Ian. It's been a great success. Really looking forward to receiving it. Fantastic project that we're happy to talk about. A new open source Intel 486 motherboard has been built from scratch in under 6 months. The initial goal was Doom, because of course cannot play Doom, and Linux compatibility, but it's gone much further. So thanks to Weeping Scorpion for linking this. The board is even smaller than Mini ITX. It accepts a 486 CPU, and it uses an FPGA for the chipset. It has two 16-bit ISA slots, a PS2 keyboard port, 4 megabytes of RAM. However, it does have its limits. It's not fully DOS compatible. It has a front-side bus limit of 24 megahertz, meaning you can't go above 48. It doesn't have DMA, so many sound cards won't work. It can only do 8-bit graphics cards, but, and thanks to Weeping Scorpion for all the extra info, and yes, I agree, it's not yet a replacement for a 486 motherboard, but because it's got an FPGA chipset, I'd imagine much, if not all of that, could come over time. But it's very interesting, and who knows where it will go. My go-to, though, is still to tell people, don't bother with 486s, get an MMX Pentium, because you can slow them right down at the DOS prompt, you can turn off the cache and the multipliers, and you can get them right down to 486 speeds, meaning that they're very versatile, and thanks to them having PCI slots, you can have it a lot easier with expansion cards. This one, though, only has two ISA slots, so you'd need a breakout board to install sound card, graphics, and an I/O card for it. So I'm not sure that it's a replacement for us guys yet, but it's certainly very interesting that someone has done it.
As covered back in episode 194, near the end of 2024, Rebellion are doing a Speedball remake, and it's now fully released. It's £24.99 on Steam. It's had some mixed reviews, but thanks to Sheepo71 for linking us to an MVG review of this release.
Now we're back to our regular rhythms with multiple Pajaco mentions per episode. Pajaco links us to a Time Extension article saying that native PC ports of PS2 games could be on the horizon with some enhancements like upscaling. Things like this have already happened with Xbox 360 and Nintendo 64 games, so this might bring us some authentic but improved games from PS2 to PC.
Senor By 445 links us to a video on an amazing looking arcade in Pennsylvania in the United States. It's in a converted church, and it's got loads of pinball and proper arcade cabs with CRTs, Holly. No LCDs, Holly. Holly was accusing me of swearing for she thought I was going to put an LCD in an arcade machine. No. Proper CRTs. This looks fantastic.
Starcade 2084 links us to a video explaining why we call sprites from the Retro Shack.
And Dr. Local linked us to a video from Andy at Hack Build Restore, who has made an Amiga 1200 Mini ITX called the Alicia. This project is for Dr. A, and Andy has collected the bill of materials and soldered it up here. You will need a donor Amiga 1200 to make this happen, but if you like your Amigas nice and small, this project might be for you. And finally, CyberGanked shared this week's top story in Old School Text Adventures, in that Andrew Plotkin's Visible Zorker project is going to create what he calls explorable exhibits of each and every Infocom text adventure. Plotkin began this project with the January 2025 release of Zork 1, and its visible version lets you see active components of the source code running with each command you enter, and you can look at every piece of debug information as you go. He released Zork 2 last month, but with a new patron-funded model, says he will be releasing a new Visible Infocom game every month.
Very interesting. It's fascinating, the stuff he comes out with. He is amazing.
And if you would like to contribute stories like these, upvote, downvote, make your comments heard, please visit us at reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
Perth, as you may well know, apart from being hot right now, is one of the most isolated cities in the world. And that's awesome if you want to survive a pandemic while still enjoying shopping and going to the pub. But in the early 2000s, when I moved here, it wasn't so great for online gaming. Even when I got my first ADSL connection, pings to the eastern states were high and local player counts were extremely low. In fact, given my go-to was Unreal Tournament, it was almost impossible to find a good match. And I slowly found out why. No one here was really into Unreal Tournament when I moved here. And with player count so low, you really had to follow whatever the current trend was. And that trend was Counter-Strike. Initially, this was CS 1.5 when I started playing, and then into CS 1.6. Now, we're talking pre-Steam here, and also played through the transition into Steam. I was one of those that opposed it, going, we're going to need to log in just to play a single-player game eventually, and I was right. But anyway, so you had to play Counter-Strike if you wanted to play a good online game, or, okay, there was a bit of Battlefield 1942 still going on, and eventually Day of Defeat came out, so people transitioned over to that, but throughout that, Counter-Strike remained the staple. And that, for me, was bad, because coming from Unreal Tournament, I did like to run around jumping up and down a lot because, well, that works, right? Except in Counter-Strike, where you just look stupid and your player slows down and your aim goes to pot and the chat, it just lights up with enemies and teammates calling you every name under the sun. In fact, I think I learned some new words in that period, just pointing out what a noob you are, whatever that means. Now, before I go on, guys, what's your go-to FPS for online play? Or if not an FPS, what did you play online? Jason?
We're out of Jason land here, I'm afraid. My online game playing peaked back in the BBS era. Games like Barren Realms and Solar Realms Elite, Operation Overkill. Those were not synchronous play games. The closest equivalent I can come up with was the real-time multiplayer MUD-adjacent game Infinity Complex. That was for multi-line major BBS. My interest in FPS fell off rapidly as everything moved to 3D and I think to more of this kind of real-time competitive thing. I think the newest FPS I've played for any length of time was No One Lives Forever 2. I may be the only person who has ever appeared on the show who has never played a moment of Half-Life. So,
Yeah, I never did the online FPS, but I did do lots of online gaming. I was doing online gaming before online gaming was a thing, I guess. I was playing MUDs, the text-based things, post-BBS, so after Jason. But text-based MUDs, which were kind of text adventures, kind of RPGs, but online. And I went for the brutal PvP ones like Juris, and it really was lethal on there, and it really did matter. I'm not knocking these Counter-Strike and so on, but on Juris you could be 2 or 3 months into gathering equipment and then lose it all in one fight. So it was really quite engaging. Yeah, it really mattered. I also then played EVE Online for a long time before I realised this has eaten my entire life and I need to stop now. And I did, and I haven't really played any more online games because they're so addictive that way. But I didn't really play any FPS games like that for more than a few minutes just to see what they were like. They just weren't really my thing. But yeah, I certainly played loads of games online.
So now in the online role-playing area, people even sell their accounts to each other, don't they? If they've worked up the stats, they'll literally sell.
But the thing is that there's an analog in your type of gaming because more so now than before, you have leagues and I'm Platinum 3 and I'm Gold 2 and so on. And that's what you're working towards. So, okay, in the RPGs, I might have an artifact sword that's the only one in the game and everyone wants it. But in your type of games, you're losing league positions and you can't lose a game for that. So I guess it's coming at the same thing from two angles.
That's why I never play leagues. But anyway, going back to Counter-Strike, anyone who's played Counter-Strike will certainly know these two maps that I'm about to mention, D-Dust and D-Dust 2. D or DE denotes the game mode, and so these maps are for bomb defusal. The terrorist team... Yes, apparently not. The terrorist team rush off in-game to plant a bomb at one of two sites, while the counter-terrorist team rush off to try and stop them or defuse the bomb if it's already been planted. Or as usually happens, people from one team rush off to spawn kill the players of the other team. D-Dust 2, I think, was particularly bad for this. Whilst the latter, if they're noobs, they're still trying to work out how you actually buy weapons and ammo at the start of each round. Dust and Dust 2, they're just those kind of maps that anyone can enjoy. They're really easy to navigate. They're not too big. So they're actually small enough to remember. And yet the placement of the objects, even if it's just a crate, and the objectives and the terrain types, there's an underpass and there's overpasses and there's a little bit of a tunnel with some stairs. And so it just takes that little bit of time to master. So it's easy to enter, a little bit hard to master. Dave?
I meant to say earlier on, I forgot. If I'm playing Oblivion, Skyrim, Morrowind, Fallout, I'm jumping about the place. Just like you did. I'm jumping about the place.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sure. You can happily jump in Dust too. You break your ankles in this kind of game, though.
Is it allowed to not play an Elder Scrolls game by jumping up and down repeatedly? Like, that's just...
You have to. The topic for another day, but there was a game that just totally broke the immersion when somebody was jumping up and down. It was a horror game, online multiplayer horror game. I'm like, don't, you've ruined the whole thing. Anyway, yeah. This kind of map making, obviously, it doesn't just come out of thin air. It takes the very best of industry's most highly paid, dedicated professionals that have studied for... Oh, no, actually, wait, sorry. These two were done by a teenager in his bedroom. The teenager was Dave Johnston from the UK. His journey into accidentally making possibly the best maps in the game and some of the most memorable maps for SPS players, they're actually detailed in an excellent 35-minute YouTube documentary by channel NoClip, hosted by Jeremy Jane in this instance, and shared with us by Dr. Local. In this awesome video, David talks about his love for map making he started map making in Wolf 3D to making his own Doom WODs, and then struggling a bit with the jump to True 3D and making Quake maps before then moving on to the iconic maps for Counter-Strike during the beta phases. He does confess that he kind of stole the concept for Dust 1 and 2.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, yes. He was inspired, is the word he used. He was inspired by some screenshots of another game that he was waiting. He was getting bored of waiting for this game to be released, and he thought, sod it, I'm just going to do it as Counter-Strike maps. And that's where the idea is. So he just based it off the screenshots that he'd seen. I don't want to tell you what game that was he was waiting for to come out. I want to encourage you to watch this original video, so go off and watch it. But he does in passing mention that he liked to map out real places, and that's where my ears pricked up because I messed around with making maps for Duke 3D, and of course I mapped out the office where I worked at the time. And likewise, when I got into making custom maps for Unreal Tournament, I chose to recreate the Laser Quest arena from Tunbridge Wells that I was highly addicted to, and it was just ingrained in my brain, so that was easy to smash out as a map. The latter made for a great deathmatch map, in my opinion anyway, because it was already designed as an arena, right, for real-life laser tag, whereas an actual real building, like an office, it doesn't automatically make a good first-person shooter map. So there's a bit of a skill to using artistic license to actually change that, adding flow and that kind of thing. So, guys, did you play Counter-Strike? I think you've answered that question. Have you heard of Dust 1 and 2? If not, have you done any kind of customization to the games you've been into? Jason?
Yeah.
Come on, Jason, help me out here because I've got nothing.
Yeah, no, sorry, 0.0 connection to Counter-Strike. I know nothing about these mods. Thank you. You've given me a good overview for somebody who has no idea what they are. Yeah. So I do now feel that I can now, that's a bomb defusal map. So very good. Good reporting, Chris. Yeah. As we talked about a bit last autumn, I was a very prolific Baldur's Gate 2 modder, which is not a game that's designed to be modded at all, but we beat it into submission. My focus was more about enhancing scenarios in the existing game rather than creating completely new maps, but I do appreciate the basic discipline involved here. My latest very quixotic side project has been to hack a bit at some of the Infocom code out there, not in an Andrew Plotkin level way, because he actually knows what he's doing. I've been kicking around a project to do a prequel of an existing game, The Witness by Stu Galley. But I'm also finding that it's a ton of work, and I'm basically just re-implementing most of the original game code. So we'll see if I ever actually finish this thing.
Yeah, no to Counter-Strike, sorry, but I do love mods. I've done a bit of creation on mods back in the days, in the 90s. Not a lot. And I get briefly involved with a Circle of 8 for Temple of Elemental Evil. A sort of successor to Baldur's Gate 2, I would say. Isometric, turn-based though. I was not prolific, and I'm not sure if I even get around to contributing anything at all, but it was all just starting off, and when I heard that Temple of Elemental Evil was getting a re-release, I was pleased to see that they're implementing some of the Circle of 8 stuff. But I did learn that as a person, I don't like to see behind the curtain. I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I avoid DVD extras on films, for example, because they spoil the magic for me. I don't want anything in my head telling me that this isn't real. I try my hardest to believe it. I don't want any help.
Can I make a suggestion? It's not even a recommendation, just a suggestion. If you've never tried listening to the commentary track on a bad movie, I recommend trying it, Because people that just are like, we know that this wasn't a great movie, but we had a great time making it. You remember this guy? He barely spoke a word of English. It was great working with him. Give it a try sometime. It may not ruin the experience as much as say as it would in a fine film.
Yeah. That sounds better than doing it for Aliens, for example.
Sure.
And then the next time I go to watch Aliens, it's a puppet. I don't want to do that.
It's not a puppet.
Yeah. The
documentary.
The commentary track to Transylvania 65000 is some of the most fun I've ever had listening to commentary
Transylvania
tracks.
65000. I can tell that's not a good film.
I've got to say though, Dave,
it's an amazing film.
Lord of the Rings behind the scenes is epic. It is as epic as the movies. I have to say, it's so good. It's so good.
I love the movie so much. I don't want.
I can appreciate that.
In the back of my head, on doing it.
Yeah.
I do love mods though. I love mods on my RPGs. I need to find out one day which mods you did for Baldur's Gate 2 to find out if I've ever played BG2 with some of you modding going on in the background. All those action mods, all those action games like Oblivion or Fallout 3, the jumping games, are massively improved by mods. I even used them in some of my recent Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough, not to make it any easier, but just for quality of life stuff like inventory management and so on. They really do help, but I'm definitely not a creator or a coder, though. My role is to be a consumer and an opinion haver.
I'm definitely not a coder, and I think I've come to appreciate that there's many roles to making a game or even a mod, and you don't have to necessarily be a coder. Going back to this very skilled person, Dave Johnston, according to the CS Wikis, which is on counterstrike.fandom.com, he began his mapping at the age of 10. That's when he was doing Wolf 3D maps. And as a result of his later work on the Counter-Strike maps, he was approached by Gearbox Software while he was still studying, and during which time he worked on Counter-Strike Condition Zero and James Bond Nightfire. After that, he was hired by Splash Damage and worked on levels for titles they were working on. And now he's a software engineer. But it does make me think of when I was trying to get into the mod teams for Unreal mods, like Red Orchestra, which is was a fantastic World War II Russian front mod. And I learned more about the Russian front than I didn't even realize it was a thing until I started playing that game. I then started looking into the history. It was really fascinating. And also there was a Star Wars mod that somebody was doing at the same time. I can't remember the name of that one now, though. And I should have pushed harder because, well, you just never know. And if you're a budding games developer or a designer, I think it's a fantastic pathway. And you should always keep pushing and chase the dream. So well done, Mr. Johnston, for living that dream. As for me, I did eventually stop jumping up and down in Counter-Strike. And possibly one of my peak gaming moments to this day was when the chat lit up with more name calling. This time, it wasn't Noob, it was Hacksaw.
Because you're a cheat.
No, they were accusing me of cheating because it was such a good round.
Well done. GG.
GG. Now it's time for this week's question of the week, starting with last week's question of the week, which was, what's the next retro hardware kit you'd like to see a quantum leap in? So I'm told in good faith we are out of contest mode. Jason, do you want to read out the top one?
Dave was so excited to read it. I yield the floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Electric Pause says software-defined DOS-era graphics cards. He says Voodoo cards are expensive now. They really are, especially the Voodoo 2s. So having the ability to switch between them in software as we can between the Gus and Sound Blaster would be really cool. Being able to slow down 3D performance by switching to the S3 Verge mode would be an interesting option too. So I'm going to come in here because this really excites me. We've got all these Pico cards that do this amazing stuff for sound cards, for example, and I/O and all the rest of it. So the next one would be an FPGA perhaps, or a Pico or something more powerful in the graphics card slot that you would communicate through DOS, and you perhaps change it to be a Voodoo at this speed, a Voodoo at that speed, or an S3 or something else, or a Matrox, whatever it is. And that would make DOS gaming so much more versatile. So that's a brilliant idea.
Next up, we got kind of an asked and answered where Robert Crowther said, I'd like a thing that plugs into printer ports on 8-bit micros, which connects to my network printer and spits out something that looks like it could have come out of a printer in the 80s. This may already exist. I've not checked. Smiley face. And then comes in File System Check It and says, well, retroprinter.com might be what you want. And Robert Crowther says, ooh, that looks like the sort of thing. So teamwork.
Nice. I might have to look into that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
GPC Rights had an answer as well. He said that some devices will do print to PNG, and you can then take those across to your printer and print it off. And apparently, the C64 does the PNGs.
Ah, there you go. That's how they're doing it. Calm School 6270 says more modern power supply replacements. I have ones for the Coleco, and Atari 8-bit that run reliably from a USB-C cable. There are more systems with a number of voltage requirements that could benefit. This really helps extend the life of the retro hardware itself, with modern power supplies having much more stable power regulators. Yeah, that's a good
There's a
one.
bit of that happening these days. There is a bit of that, yeah.
Yeah. I've certainly got all my Amigas running on modern power CD32. Some systems you get luckily with, like the Spectrum, you can just go to your electronics store, and as long as you get the polarity right, you can get the right voltage and amps.
There's a good one there from Jason's friend. Fault
You're going to have to be a little more specific.
Pajaco.
They're all Jason's friends.
Yeah. He says fault diagnostics. We have plenty of single system solutions like C64, diagnostic harness, etc. But I'd love to be able to go into an emulator and say, break the graphics chip or kill this specific RAM chip. This idea, you could break your emulated device in the same way your real device is broken. I'm not sure how difficult that would be, Paul. I don't know. But yeah, good idea, though.
And it's not that we're not friendly or anything. It's just that, remember, as I tried to work out how this show worked, I was like, okay, they cover the things that this guy Pajaco tells them to. Like that, as I tried to decode how this program worked, it seemed like he was always being mentioned. So I'm like, all right, he's the news editor. I don't know.
I think I referred to him as our unofficial.
Dr. Local.
Oh, yes, and Dr. Local. Our unofficial writers.
Another one, it's me thyroid. Your mate.
Oh, where's that one? I'm scrolling. Vector graphics reproduced with lasers. Laser.
Frickin' laser beams. It's all Dr. Evil.
I'd be happy with ill-tempered Seabass. Yep, that's a good idea. Wasn't somebody working on that?
Yeah.
That rings a bell.
Ollie in the cave.
Yeah.
I think that was said out loud. I'm not.
No, I've seen something. No, I've seen something in a video. It certainly wasn't something I saw him. Yeah, it was in a video.
Laser beams.
Very cool.
We should probably give them the question for next week.
Yeah.
And get out of here because it's very late in Perth, Australia.
Yeah.
Certainly is.
Yeah, and Chris needs to go outside and try and cool down.
So if you were given a decent budget and a chance to curate a retro tech museum, what historical displays would you create? And I'll just say, it has to be something that could exist in the world. So, you can't just, create something out of whole cloth. But if it's
Ultima.
out there and you could get it, what would you curate?
The whole of Ultima.
Well, now everybody knows how to get in the top 3 this week.
Yes.
That's not how it works.
We're still going to be outvoted.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not rigged. It is. Audience,
Ultima.
I promise you, there's no rigging here. Ignore Jason.
Everybody else does. All right. Thanks, everybody. Go to reddit.com/retro to participate in that and all other questions out there.
Bye.
Of weekly interest.
We're all waving.
We're all waving.
Bye.
reddit.com/r/addict.media.
Doing great.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 The Gamer, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available for your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.